Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is a nice Wednesday, and today we are diving, truly headfirst into one of the most intense stories shaping technology right now.
It really is. We've got a stack of sources here detailing the AI race, and the feeling you get isn't, innovation. It's more like sheer panic.
That's the word for it. Today, our focus is squarely on Sam Altman's recent declaration of a code red
Yeah.
at OpenAI.
Exactly. And our mission here is to unpack all this source material. We want to synthesize the financial, the competitive, and even the geopolitical pressures that are just bearing down on the company that started this whole generative AI revolution.
Okay, so let's get into that. We are talking about the market leader, right?
Mhm.
The company everyone sees as the champion, and they're the ones hitting the emergency button.
It's a huge paradox.
It is. And as we go through this, we want you to keep three big questions in your mind. First one, how much financial risk is actually necessary to keep a lead in a race that is this fast?
And second, can these kinds of emergency measures, all hands on deck, truly combat a giant like Google? They have almost infinite resources.
And the last one, and this is the one that affects all of us, if the pioneers themselves are in this much of a panic, how quickly will their AI agents actually transform our daily work lives? Is it really 2025, or is that timeline getting warped?
Those are the core tensions, absolutely.
And hey, just a quick note, if you like this kind of breakdown, this deep dive approach, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up. It really helps us do more of these.
All right, let's jump in.
Let's do it. So the core issue, stakes are higher than ever. The thing that strikes me is this code red itself. It's a panic button, sure, but it's being pressed by the company that seemed completely untouchable just last year.
And what's fascinating, and the sources are really clear on this, is that the urgency comes from measurable competitive erosion. That comfortable lead OpenAI had. It's dissolving fast.
So the public perception might be that they're still way out in front.
But the data in the sources tells a very different story. Rivals like Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, they aren't just playing catch-up anymore. They are closing that performance gap.
It's not just about matching features.
No, not at all. The sources are pretty unequivocal. They say OpenAI's lead is, and I'm quoting here, no longer guaranteed, and the race is now neck and neck.
Wow. So that internal code red, it suggests that their crown is genuinely slipping.
It absolutely is, and it's slipping just as this tech is moving from, a novelty to a real utility.
Which means we've gone from a research phase to an all-out commercial sprint.
And that sprint demands radical decisions. Which brings us to what a code red actually, means inside OpenAI.
Right. So what happens when a billion-dollar company declares an emergency? What gets shut down?
Well, it means dropping everything. Everything that's not essential for immediate survival. The sources detail these immediate and pretty brutal operational changes.
All focused on ChatGPT.
Every last resource.
Yeah.
And that included immediately shelving some really key projects, high potential ones.
Okay, so which projects got the axe? Which ones were seen as non-critical?
The sources specifically call out three: ads, the Pulse Assistant, and then the health and shopping AI agents.
Wait, those aren't small side projects? Health agents, an ad business. Those are massive future revenue streams.
Exactly. They are sacrificing future monetization to win the fight that's happening right now, today.
That's an incredible trade-off.
It is. All hands have to be on making ChatGPT faster, better, more reliable than Gemini. And to do that, they're having daily emergency meetings. The focus is speed, reliability, and personalization. Nothing else.
And at the same time, they're also pushing an aggressive expansion.
Yes, there's this internal push called warp speed expansion. It's about getting more capabilities out, expanding global access, and just locking in their user base before that performance gap with Gemini disappears entirely.
This kind of desperate push must cost an insane amount of money, which I guess leads us right to the financial pressure cooker.
And this is where the numbers just get, honestly, they're hard to comprehend.
They're eye-watering. What's the biggest number you pulled from the sources on their cash burn?
Okay, so the sources project that OpenAI's annual losses could triple. They could hit $14 billion by 2026.
14 billion with a B.
With a B. That's a burn rate that is almost unprecedented. And it's driven by the need for GPUs and the insane cost of training these next-gen models.
That number just... It implies the whole business model, this resource-heavy LLM training, isn't actually profitable yet, not at scale.
Not even close. And to sustain that, to fight off competitors, Altman needs to raise Well, a casual $100 billion.
100 billion. And that fundraising target, it all hinges on ChatGPT's performance, right? If the product stumbles, that money is gone.
Instantly. The growth has to be there to justify that kind of investment.
But hold on, if they need 100 billion, what about Microsoft? Are they not willing to fund this anymore? Or is this code red also, a strategic narrative to justify that massive ask to new investors?
That is the critical tension, right there in the sources. Microsoft is still a key partner, but $100 billion is so huge it suggests they have to look broader. And yes, the code red narrative perfectly frames the urgency for that kind of massive check.
So if you're burning billions just to stay afloat, what does that say about the long-term viability of this whole business model? That's a question for you to really think about.
And the pressure isn't just commercial, it's also geopolitical. Altman is out there actively warning that the U.S. could lose its AI leadership.
And this isn't just about building a better chatbot, is it? The sources point to something more fundamental, like infrastructure.
Exactly. China has this sort of hidden advantage in its vast and reliable power grid. That is what's fueling their data center expansion. These models need incredible amounts of consistent energy.
And what about the chip export controls? Are those even working?
The sources suggest not really. They say the controls are unlikely to slow China's AI progress effectively.
So engineers just find workarounds.
They find workarounds, they optimize architecture, they use local production, they focus on software over hardware. And China is building these massive proprietary data sets that U.S. companies just can't touch.
So while that's the long-term threat, the immediate pain, the thing that triggered the code red, was Google.
Right. Let's talk about Gemini, because this is where you see the market shift that justified hitting the button. Google didn't just release a good competitor. They took a huge bite out of OpenAI's market share immediately.
What were the metrics? What were the numbers that were so scary?
The user growth was just explosive. So Gemini went from 450 million monthly active users in July to 650 million by October.
Wait, that's a 200 million user jump in 3 months.
In 3 months. It shows just how fast users will switch when a quality alternative appears.
And it wasn't just about the number of users, it was about quality too, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Gemini actually surpassed OpenAI on key industry benchmarks. It hit the #1 spot. Plus, Google is pouring money into AI agents and totally dominating image generation, which puts pressure on OpenAI across the board.
But are those benchmarks? I mean, how much do they really matter in the real world? Does a slight benchmark lead actually make users switch when ChatGPT has such a huge head start?
That's a great question. The sources suggest the benchmarks are a big psychological blow, especially for enterprise clients. But the real killer is integration. Gemini plugging into Google's whole ecosystem search, workspace, you name it. That's the thing that forces OpenAI to innovate even faster.
So faced with all of this, the 100 billion ask, China, Gemini taking the top spot, how is Altman responding? He's betting everything on ChatGPT.
He is doubling down on his core asset, and you have to remember their biggest advantage is still the sheer scale of their user base.
And what did that base look like now?
It's massive. Over 800 million weekly users worldwide, which is gigantic, even if, as the sources remind us, the company is still not profitable.
So the counterattack is all about innovation.
Purely. They're planning a direct assault on Gemini's perceived quality lead with what the sources call a new reasoning model.
A reasoning model. What does that mean technically?
It's a model designed specifically for complex, multi-step tasks. Think intricate coding problems or long logic puzzles, the stuff where normal LLMs tend to break down or hallucinate. This new model is aimed squarely at outperforming Gemini, where it counts for high-value users.
And this is where it gets really interesting for all of us. This frantic pace connects directly to the societal implications, the AI gold rush and its risks.
Yeah, this isn't happening in a vacuum. The sources say this progress is driven by the exponential scaling of compute and data. They call it Moore's Law on steroids.
So we're not talking about chips getting faster every 2 years.
No, we're talking about the size of the data sets and training clusters doubling every few months. That's the engine driving this whole panic.
And Altman himself is actually sounding the alarm on the fallout from this, even as he's the one pushing it forward.
He is. He's on record predicting AI agents will transform the workforce by 2025. And not just factory jobs. We're talking white-collar creative and administrative work. He's warning about economic disruption and the need for wise policy.
Which raises a huge question. If scaling this tech means burning billions and disrupting the entire global workforce, who's responsible for creating that wise policy? The companies or the governments?
And speaking of leadership, you have to look at Altman's personal journey through all this. I mean, the pressure must be immense.
It's surreal. You remember just last year, he survived that dramatic firing and reinstatement as CEO. To go through that and then immediately turn around and try to raise $100 billion is something else.
The sources suggest he kind of embraces these challenges. He claims he learned a lot about governance from that whole mess. But you still have this deep irony, right? He's talking about building AGI for all humanity, but the $100 billion target suggests the real mission right now is just commercial survival.
Which brings us to the end, the critical moment. This code red is more than a panic button. It's a race against time, rivals, and financial reality.
It's absolutely a make or break moment. The next breakthroughs from ChatGPT, especially that new reasoning model, they are essential. They could genuinely define the future of AI leadership and, OpenAI's entire fate.
And like the sources say, when you look at the hits they've taken, losing the #1 benchmark spot, that massive user migration to Gemini the Code Red starts to make perfect sense.
Yeah, there's a concluding quote from the material that just captures it perfectly. It says, when Google takes a big bite out of your market share and dominates image generation, suddenly that code red button doesn't seem so dramatic anymore. It feels like simple necessity.
What an incredibly intense situation. So we've covered the staggering $100 billion target, the threat from Gemini, the need for this new reasoning model, and that long-term pressure from China.
And the underlying tension here is just fascinating to me. How much is market perception actually worth when a company with 800 million users is still in this desperate fight, burning billions just to hold on to a shrinking lead? That is the question.
Fantastic analysis, and thank you for sharing your sources with us for this deep dive. And for everyone listening, if this breakdown was helpful, please do like the video and subscribe for more. We'll see you next time.